A very rare July weather pattern is coming to the United States, bringing both some very unusual severe weather as well as some extreme flooding potential. First off, we have an enhanced risk of severe weather today across New England, where portions of Maine could be looking at a few strong tornadoes. This is very unusual for this region, but we need to be on the lookout for some dangerous storms. We're also tracking, unfortunately, a very dangerous flood threat developing in Texas, with the potential for some catastrophic flooding in portions of the Texas Hill Country. Everyone in this region needs to be paying attention to the weather over the next few days, because some of these impacts could be very dangerous. There's a lot to talk about with a lot of different concerns, unfortunately. Today is Tuesday, July 14th. Today in the weather world, we'll break down all the details so you can stay safe. So starting right off the bat with our severe weather risk, we do have a pretty significant area of severe weather in the northeast, and this is very unusual actually. We have an enhanced risk of severe weather across most of Maine, northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, with a slight risk expanding for the rest of Maine a little further south, and a marginal risk going as far south as Concord. So if you're in any of these areas, heads up for some severe weather. We're also tracking some severe weather concerns in Canada from Montreal to Quebec. These storms will be moving into Maine. And again, this is a very unusual place to see severe weather. I can't remember when the last time we had an enhanced level 3 out of 5 risk in this region. So people here might not be as prepared, but we want to be weather aware today. There could actually be some tornadoes. The tornado risk is looking fairly significant, especially in this yellow shade. That's a 10% hatch risk, where not only decent coverage of tornadoes is possible, but there could be a few stronger tornadoes. We're talking about EF2+. This is the state of Maine, and we're talking about strong tornadoes. So this is very unusual. If we're under a tornado warning, remember to go in the most interior room of your house, underground if possible. The significant tornado threat though extends all the way down to Vermont and New Hampshire, so this will definitely catch many of you off guard. Make sure we're paying attention to the weather. We also have a really significant wind threat, especially with these hatch lines. That's where 75 miles per hour plus winds are possible, more than enough to cause some power outages, as well as somewhat of a hail risk. Now zooming out, we do also have a slight risk of severe weather across Montana. This is mainly for some damaging winds in this region, central Montana, so watch out for some storms this evening. We also have a marginal risk of severe weather across Florida, just some tropical moisture, a few sea breeze storms, nothing out of the ordinary. So let's hone in on that severe weather threat across the northeast and Maine. First, let's track the tornado parameters, because some of these values are surprisingly high, and this is why that tornado risk is elevated. These values here basically show how strong the tornadoes that do form could get, and some of the atmospheric conditions are favorable, where we have a lot of wind shear, we have a lot of spin in the atmosphere, that some of these values are elevated enough to produce some of those stronger tornadoes. So a few EF2+ tornadoes, that is significant. It can do some pretty big damage in this region as some of these storms roll through. So here's what that's going to look like on the radar. The storms are going to move from northwest to southeast, so they're going to ride the upper levels of the atmosphere. We have a lot of wind energy up there that's propelling these storms forward. Before they reach the US, they have to go through Canada, and even here there could be a few strong tornadoes, some damaging winds. So if you're in Quebec or areas in that region, you also have to be on guard for some pretty strong storms. Eventually these will slip into Maine. Some of these could be bringing powerful swaths of damaging winds, and we also have that threat for a few embedded tornadoes within some of these cells. Notice how it's not just one round, there are multiple rounds. So after that first round comes through, look at this, we could have a second round, or maybe even a third round of some supercells later on into the afternoon, into the evening, progressing once again from northwest to southeast. Eventually the tornado threat lessens a little bit, becomes more of a damaging wind threat as the storms move further to the southeast, but some of these storms back into New York, back near Ottawa in Canada, and then also moving toward Burlington, Vermont, we could have some strong to severe thunderstorms before everything kind of fades away overnight. Definitely something you'll want to pay attention to for your evening commute, and just stay weather aware through the day. Now real quickly going over to Montana, that's the other risk for some scattered storms. Notice some of these storms popping up in the afternoons. Could be some very gusty winds, heavy rain, nothing too crazy, but definitely watching out for that damaging wind risk. Alright, and that's it for the severe weather. The good news is, out of the next 3 days, today is really the only day I'm watching for severe weather concerns. The bad news is we have another risk setting up over Texas, and that's a pretty significant flood threat. So this is the other big story in the weather world. Look at all this rainfall we've already had just from today and yesterday across southern and central Texas, especially in portions west of San Antonio. We have a few spots here that have picked up 10 inches of rain. Keep this in mind because we have more rain on tap, and this could potentially compound some very significant flood issues in this region. So for today, we have a pretty large marginal risk from the Four Corners all the way into the southeastern US. So anyone in the green shade, some scattered thunderstorms are possible. If you're in the yellow shade, especially in this portion of central Mississippi and Alabama, another portion of South Carolina, some locally heavier rain is possible. Definitely be on the alert for a few flood alerts. We're really keying in though on Texas from Austin into San Antonio further to the west. This is where we have a moderate to even high risk of flooding. So moderate is a level 3 out of 4. About 1 in 4 flood fatalities occur in moderate regions. High risk, that's a level 4 out of 4. There's at least a 70% chance of flooding, and not just regular flooding, significant flooding is possible. So this is a type of risk we see when we have hurricanes making landfall, and there's not necessarily any big tropical system associated with this. We just have a lot of moisture stalled over this region. So this is expected to be very, very significant. If you're in this high risk, which is areas west of San Antonio, so from Del Rio down to Eagle Pass, the Edwards Plateau, really make sure you're keying in on the forecast later today. This could be a very dangerous situation, very, very fast. If you live near creeks, rivers, it could flood very quickly. This moderate risk region, that's still very significant. It extends further in the Texas Hill Country, just clipping Austin and just clipping San Antonio. Tomorrow, there's also a moderate risk across southwest Texas, so talking from the Big Bend of Texas down into the Hill Country, Edwards Plateau, those same regions today. One of the reasons why this is such a big deal is it's multiple days of heavy rain on end, and this threat might not end until all the way Thursday. I think it's extremely likely we'll get a localized high risk somewhere in this region once we get a little more confidence on where the heaviest rain will set up. Day 3, the risk shifts a little bit further to the west, so now we're tracking centered over Del Rio. The slight risk extends a little bit further north toward Midland, San Angelo. Hopefully the I-35 corridor can dry out a little bit, and then by Friday the threat really does clear up a bit. One of the reasons we're so confident of the flooding is how much moisture is in the atmosphere. This is a precipitable water values. Look at all these red and purple colors. This is some deep tropical moisture coming in from the Gulf. Any storms that form will be able to take advantage of it and really wring out very efficient rain. We could be talking about 2 to 3 inches of rain in just 1 hour. Considering slow storm motion and training of storms, this could quickly lead to disaster. So very high rainfall totals are made possible by all this moisture in place. Tracking out what the radar could look like, keep in mind this model won't be perfect, but really look out for the red areas, the heavy rain training over the same areas over and over again. So as we go on to today, later on Tuesday, we see a pretty big mess, a pretty big blob of rain all the way from Austin southwestward. The heaviest rain actually already occurred in the morning, and we'll get a bit of a lull as we get into the afternoon and evening. A few heavy downpours definitely possible, but not too widespread. Don't be fooled though, the rain is coming back, it's not over. Overnight tonight, models are very consistent in bringing back some heavy rain all the way from Austin to San Antonio and areas a little bit further to the west. Some heavy rain redeveloping over the Edwards Plateau, over the Hill Country. This is especially concerning because this is a nocturnal threat. So if you know anyone in this region that's by rivers, make sure that they are paying attention to the weather tonight and have an evacuation plan ready in case the rivers flood. Because if we do see some of this torrential rainfall over the same areas for hours on end, it's very possible that we get some very significant and potentially extremely dangerous river rises. So that's something we're very concerned about. Just the sheer amount of rain depicted on this model is very impressive. This is now waking up Wednesday morning. We still have a lot of rain in this region, especially in that area west of San Antonio. Watch how also the radar kind of swirls. It's looking pretty likely we're going to get a mesoscale convective vortex, an MCV, and these are just swirls of low pressure that can really focus heavy rain over the same areas for hours on end. All morning on Wednesday, some very heavy rain, more waves of rain moving through Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday evening now, we could still have some scattered rain, maybe not as widespread, but this is after hours and hours of rainfall. Thursday, another round of heavy rain is possible. Now the good news, it might shift a little bit further west, so the flood risk was shifting a little west, maybe now a little bit more toward Abilene, San Angelo, but just more heavy rain in Texas as we go into Thursday morning. It's going to be very wet, not going to rain every single hour over the next few days, but when it does rain, it'll be very significant. Let's take a look at 2 different high resolution models interpretation of the rainfall, and look at this very concerning swath of yellow and even this brown color. This is a Rufus model. It does say San Antonio will be in on some of the heavier rain, and some of these yellow colors here, this is easily 12 inches. That's a foot of rainfall. This brown color, this could be a localized maxima somewhere in this region where we could get 24 inches, 2 feet of rain. Now remember, we've already seen 10 inches of rain in this region, so if we get this additional rain, that could potentially be in excess of 2 feet somewhere in this region. Don't focus on the specific locations. The high-res models will never predict exactly where those bullseyes will fall, but somewhere in this region we could be talking about that extreme rain, and if that does fall, that could be very damaging and cause some very serious impacts, potentially catastrophic impacts, not only to the rivers but even urban impacts, especially if that occurs closer to the I-35 I-35 corridor. Now here's the HRRR model, the other model, and what's concerning is that there's agreement between the two models on some of these bullseyes of heavier rain. Look at this. We have another bullseye according to this model where 24 inches, 2 feet of rainfall is possible somewhere to the west of San Antonio. Notice there are some slight differences. This model brings a little bit more rain into the Austin area. Still very wet for San Antonio, but this is very concerning picture for sure. I know this is July. It's a very sensitive time coming after July 2025 floods, and while we're not saying that there'll be anything of that magnitude in this region, we definitely do want to treat this threat very seriously, especially if you're by rivers. Make sure you have a plan to get out of there in case these rivers rapidly rise, because I will say if we do see 24 inches of rain somewhere, that will be very significant. We don't want to scare anyone, but we definitely want to be prepared for some very significant flooding somewhere in the Edwards Plateau or the hill country of Texas. So those are the two areas of main concern, the severe weather in the northeast and that really significant flood threat across Texas. Just to give a bit of a broader picture over the next few days, what's going to be happening is we're going to have our big high pressure that we talked about last video. That's really going to be breaking down, so it's going to allow a lot more moisture to come into the central and eastern US. So just taking a bit of a look a little bit longer term, it does look like rain will return to portions of the Midwest and then eventually the eastern US as we go toward the end of the week and into next weekend. Notice this cluster of rain possible across the Midwest moving into New England by next weekend. There definitely is a severe weather risk possible in here, but details are very low this far out. We'll have another video tracking this if it becomes a little more concerning as time goes on. Other than that, the monsoon in the west is fully kicking off. We have a lot of daily afternoon thunderstorms expected from the Four Corners extending a little bit further north. This is very typical, a lot of Pacific moisture moving in. In fact, look at this. We're going to have a few Pacific hurricanes that are forming out in the open waters, and while the hurricanes themselves will not impact land, they will be sending some moisture to the southwest US. So this is much needed, especially because we're in some pretty bad drought over here. It could just cause some isolated flooding for some of those spots where it falls too fast. Hey, taking a look at temperatures also, the other good news is the extreme heat that we've been dealing in the north, it's not going to completely go away, but it will kind of spread out and not be as intense, especially for Montana and the Dakotas. We've been absolutely baking. We have an unofficial reading of 118 degrees in Montana. That would shatter the hottest temperature ever recorded in the state. So that's just insane. Over the next few days, we still have some hot temperatures for sure. For these red shades, these are temperatures more in the 90s, maybe upper 90s, low 100s, nowhere near 118 or 110 degrees like we've been seeing. Over the next few days, the heat will really spread out. So yes, the northern plains will be hot, but will also be hot across the mid-Atlantic, the northeast, the Midwest will be pretty well into the 90s. It's summer, so it's gonna definitely feel like that over the next few days. Add in a little bit of humidity, the heat indices will definitely be exceeding 100 degrees. So as always, we want to be mindful of the heat. The good news though is it doesn't look as extreme as it has been. So notice today how the heat is concentrated in the north, and then as I just go day by day on the heat outlook, each and every day the threat kind of expands a little bit further to the east. So by the time we're reaching Friday, by the end of the week, now much more of the eastern US is in this orange to red. That's moderate to major heat risk, and then this continues by next weekend. But at least we can take away that purple color. Not as extreme, but still moderate to major and still worth staying hydrated and paying attention to. Now before we go, one last teaser that I want to mention for next week's weather. So we're talking a bit far out. There are some indications that there could be some potential tropical activity of some sort in the Gulf, maybe impact portions of the southeast US. Now right now, this is very early stages, don't get locked into any big threat, but some of our models are saying an increase in moisture. Even if we don't get a tropical system forming, we could just be looking at a lot of rain in this general region. So something I wanted to point out, we might have to start watching the Gulf a little closer next week. Still got plenty of time until we get there though, of course. And that's a look at the weather across the country and the weather world. Big two stories is the severe weather in the northeast and that big time flood threat across Texas. We really want to make sure that we're getting the word out there and we have a plan in place for some of the potentially big time flooding across southwest Texas. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you all stay safe out there. If you never want to miss an update in the weather world, including tracking that potential tropical system in the Gulf, consider subscribing. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day and I'll see you next time.